This podcast contains our own personal views not associated with any organisation. Coronial contains descriptions of death inquests that may be graphic and disturbing to some listeners. Discretion is advised. Hi everyone and welcome back to Coronial. My name's Emma.
I'm Georgie.
And I'm Alice.
And to start off, in this episode, we're going to be discussing the death of a First Nations boy. So for this reason, I'm not going to be referring to the individual's name as it is in the title of the actual inquest, but I'm instead going to use the name that was requested by the family and was used throughout the substance of the inquest, which is Rory.
Interesting, okay. So they were saying it's fine to use a name.
Yeah, just not his actual name. And I think that's quite common.
Yeah.
In a way that they do it.
Please, if I'm incorrect about this, I'm very sorry. But I think that's quite
us.
common in First Nations customs and law that they generally don't like to refer to the actual name of a deceased person once they've passed away. So they'll generally use like a different name.
I knew they're not wanting to. I didn't realise that they then, might use a substitute.
A different name.
Yep.
But I think also in these circumstances where the person does need to be referred to, and that's almost out of respect, like they were an individual and they were a human that has now passed away, you do want to still give them some sort of identity, but without being disrespectful to the culture and customs and things like that. So just pointing out that if you do go into the notes, click on the link, the report is a different name.
Yeah.
That's why.
Okay.
So Rory was 11 years old at the time of his death, which occurred in October 2020. He was born in Darwin but moved to Gunbalanya, which is a community about 300 kilometres east of Darwin, and he moved there with his family as a young child.
Am I assuming this is a community that does not have that many people in it?
Correct. I don't know how many people it's got in it, but it is a small community, and I think it's a predominantly First Nations community as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Rory lived with his family in Gunbalanya, where he attended school every day. He was described as a happy-go-lucky boy who was a good runner, and he was big into sports. He loved basketball, football, and bike riding, and apparently he was a very good hunter.
Nice. Cool.
In September 2020, Rory's uncle went to Gunbalanya as part of his work where he delivered food and fuel to outstations, so remote community.
Okay.
There's that need for people to do deliveries.
Yep.
So while in Gunbalanya, Rory's uncle was allocated a house to stay in while he was performing his duties, and that house was House 548, which was a property that was maintained by Rory's uncle's employer.
Okay.
So he's out in Gunbalanya as part of his employment. He's been housed at a particular house that's maintained.
And did you say,
by an employer.
Is he staying there like a night here and there, or is he staying like long term?
No, more long term.
Yeah, okay.
And because I can't imagine there would be like a hotel or a motel or something out there.
We're
to put
talking
people up. Yeah.
There's probably like 1, maybe 200 people max in these communities.
It's a remote community. Yeah.
Remote, very small. On the 27th of October 2020, Rory and his younger brother went over to the house to play the PlayStation, and they stayed there overnight. When Rory left the next morning, he accidentally left his mobile phone in the house. At about 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, Rory was dropped off at the house with the intention of picking up his mobile phone. But it turned out that his uncle and auntie, who also was at the house living at the time with the uncle who was working there, they weren't at the house, they were out delivering fuel as part of their job. So the uncle and auntie got back to the house at about 9:15 p.m. that night. They had dinner, they sat outside on the veranda for a little while, and then they went to bed. The next morning, Rory's auntie took the rubbish out to the bins at about 6:30 a.m. when she noticed a boy lying over the top of the beam of the veranda.
Like in the rafters of the veranda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, up the top.
Okay.
So, for context, House 548 had verandas on 2 of its sides.
Mm-hmm.
So, the verandas have steel poles, which are supporting a steel beam on the top, upon which the rafters rest, and then the iron roof is on top of the rafters.
Yep.
There was also steel mesh on each side of the veranda, assumingly to detract any theft or anything from the property. But the steel mesh went from the ground up to about 20 centimetres under that steel beam. So there was a gap between the mesh and the steel beam at
and
the top.
then the roof and the rafters.
And then there was the roof and the rafters on top.
So you presumably could climb up the mesh in an attempt to get onto the roof?
Or attempt to get into that 20 centimetre gap over the mesh and into the veranda to get into the house.
Oh, because the house was locked and you couldn't get in.
Couldn't get in because there was a veranda.
Yeah. Okay, so the mesh presumably like has a gate through it or something, or there's something that blocks
there's some
your
way,
access.
but that is locked.
Yeah,
presumably at this point in time.
I wasn't sure if there was an open portion of the mesh, but you're saying it is for security purposes, so
Yeah, so there's an open portion of the mesh. Yes, there is for access.
Yeah, like a
general
door.
access, but there's also a 20 centimetre gap at the top as well, which presumably most people would not try and access.
20 centimetres is not very big. Yeah.
It's not very big and would not try and access. So the boy was lying over the top of the beam, so at the top, on the outside edge of the mesh. So his stomach was on top of the beam. His legs were on the outside of the mesh, so the outside of the veranda.
Mm-hmm.
And his chest, arms, and head were on the inside of the mesh. So he was essentially, there was a beam, and he was essentially sort of in a jackknife position, sort of
so it was
slumped
a bit
over.
wedged as well. Yeah.
Kind of.
But like half in, half out of.
Half in, half out. He's trying to get over, and he hasn't got stuck, but he's
in that position.
That is where he's found. Yeah.
And you said they got back at like 9 p.m. So after dark, presumably this has been noticed in the morning where it's daylight, and therefore it's far more obvious that there is an individual there.
Yes,
yeah.
correct.
Because I was like, how did they miss it on the way in? Because it was dark.
And there's also two verandas, and I'm not sure, like, there was one
which
at the
one
back.
they like,
I'm not sure which
whether
one
they went
was
to the other.
One. Yeah, whether they entered.
They may not have actually walked past there or been in that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. So the fingers of his right hand were gripping the mesh, and he was obviously deceased. So Rory's auntie alerted the uncle, so her partner, and the uncle then rang his boss.
Can I just assume that the only way that this woman would have been able to alert her husband was with the terrifying scream that would have happened when you noted that?
I can only imagine.
Mm, yeah, that's horrible.
That is like vision of my nightmares.
Yeah.
Seeing a person slumped on.
Yeah.
And especially, I don't know whether she would have recognised him
Probably.
at that
I think
point.
she did.
Yeah.
So they rang the boss. The boss then came to the house and called emergency services straight away.
Yeah, and I wonder if the boss is the first port of call in that setting due to emergency services probably being very difficult to
And also, like, this is the property of the
someone
employer.
else. Yeah.
Could be potential language barrier issues as well, with them being concerned about calling emergency services and not
True.
actually being able to communicate with them. I don't know. This is just
The employer may also have a ladder or
Be able to
Maybe it was just
something, or
as
be
well.
able to,
just a trusted individual that they had in their lives that they
Yeah.
were more comfortable calling at that point in time than calling emergency services. So the boss told the emergency operators that it appeared that a young boy had been trying to get into the house and got stuck, and at that point he was starting to smell. So it obviously being a little bit of time.
It's also Northern Territory in what time of year again?
Yeah, in November. So,
it's
it's really, really
warm
hot.
and humid as well.
And he was dropped off at what, like 5:30?
4:30 in the afternoon, straight after school.
So
probably that happened pretty immediately after, I would assume, because he would have...
he may have tried the
a couple
front
of
door
different
to see
ways.
if that was open.
But you know, it wouldn't have been long after like 5 or 5:30. When police arrived at the scene, it was clear that Rory had been dead for some time. His body was cold and rigor mortis had set in. So all of that checks out. At that time, a crime scene was established and crime scene investigation teams were flown in from Darwin, and they arrived to the house just before midday, so it did obviously take them a while to get there. So from the scene, it was not clear how Rory died. There was no evidence of trauma, and he was not stuck.
Oh.
He was not wedged. So he was quite light and thin, and there was definitely enough clearance between him, like his back, and the roof. Like, he was not stuck.
He was grabbing the mesh. His hand was still on the mesh?
He was, so he was always trying to pull himself
out. Okay, so it wasn't like there was like an electric fence or like
You're close.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're getting
Right.
close.
I was going to say maybe he just got really scared once he was up the top there and
But
froze.
it's an unnatural position for you to still be grasping something in the air. You would have slumped and released,
go.
I would
Yeah,
have
okay.
thought.
Yep. Yeah, gotcha.
Knowing absolutely nothing about forensics in any formal manner.
But yeah, generally when you do pass away, I'm assuming your muscles generally
you relax
relax
first, and then the changes in your body composition cause the muscles to contract again.
Contract
which
once
leads
rigor
to
mortis. Yeah, sort of it sets and things
Again,
like that.
I say knowing nothing about forensics.
Do we know much about much in this
fair.
podcast? A lot of the time we're just sort of, it's all conjecture, but we try. So an autopsy was conducted and the forensic pathologist was of the initial view that the cause of death was positional asphyxia. However, there was no indication of why he had been in this jackknife position so long to succumb to positional asphyxia, because again, he wasn't stuck. So biochemistry was done, including for snake venom detection, along with histology and toxicology, but nothing of significance was found.
But presumably there could have been like a snake up in the roof or some sort of
Absolutely.
spider or something, that we hadn't really considered. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he wasn't stuck, so if he'd been bitten by something, I guess he could have got himself down.
He could have got himself down.
Unless he was bitten by something before he started climbing, didn't realise it, and then
got in that position
and
and
started to...
Yeah, okay.
got lightheaded. So at the time of Rory's death, his older brother was at school in Darwin, but obviously upon hearing of his brother's death, he asked to come back to Gunbalanya and asked to be taken to the house where it occurred, and this was just done with his family. It wasn't done with police or anything like that.
Yep.
And I think being curious as he did, he decided to climb the mesh in the area that Rory had been found. And as he got near the top of the mesh, he put his head through the space between the beam and the roof where Rory was found. And as he did so, he felt a sharp pain shoot through the right side of his head and down his neck, and he felt immobilized for a few seconds.
Oh.
Was he with someone else at the time?
Yes. Yeah, so he was with his
so he was
family.
being witnessed.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
That's terrifying.
So the following day, Rory's mother told the investigators about this, and the police organised for an electrician to inspect the premises the same day. And the electrician found that the metal roof had 240 volts running through it.
What?
The entire roof was completely electrified.
Oh my god.
So basically, I mean, the brother was electrocuted, but just in a way that didn't
not
kill
enough, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And no other investigators had accidentally been electrocuted.
No one had climbed on the roof.
But the beam was near the roof, so when they were removing Rory, there still would have been a chance that someone could have touched that roof.
But no one did, and it's only the fact
So
that...
the beam wasn't electrified, and we'll get into this. The beam itself wasn't electrified. The mesh itself wasn't electrified.
But the roof was.
The roof was, and the riser pole, which was connecting the electricity to the house, was. So there's two things that were electrified, and a couple of other metal things that weren't.
Wow.
So if his brother hadn't have climbed up there, they probably never would have known.
I mean, someone would have got electric shock
at some point.
Eventually, but it could have been years later.
And also, they don't know how many years
it had
the
been
house was
electrified.
Electrified for. Because how often do you go up on the roof?
Yeah, not often. In fact, I've never been on a roof.
So, let's get into it. This is getting a little bit technical with, electricity and how it works and is conducted. So I'm very sorry to any... Sorry, there's an electrical storm actually happening right now, and I'm staring right at a thunderstorm. So I'm sorry to any electricians out there that are like, what are you saying? This is completely incorrect. We're trying our best. And I'm going to say a lot of words that probably won't make sense, and that's fine. Let's just roll with it.
I'm going to continue with the blank face, being like, I don't understand.
So the installation on service lines, and I believe the reference to service lines is the same as a power line. Okay. So your general overhead power lines.
And I think, are they the ones also that go from the power line to the house?
Versus between power lines.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So between what's called like a riser pole in the house.
Yep.
So the insulation on these service lines was degraded, and the service conductors had been shaped away from the braided cables attaching the clamp to the metal gooseneck riser.
Yes.
All of the safety things were not doing their job.
Basically. The braided cables were also in direct contact with the metal of the gooseneck riser attached to the premises, so basically there's metal on metal.
Yeah.
and it's electrified.
Yeah, it's conducting that electricity to the roof.
Yeah, basically. So all of those were just words, but basically things were degraded that shouldn't be degraded, and things were rubbing on things that shouldn't be rubbing.
And presumably in a more urban area, those things are monitored in terms of life expectancy, where like we're only going to have in an urban setting service lines that are upgraded every so often because they only have a 10-year life expectancy, or presumably longer than that, but like those things are going to be monitored. But the more rural you get, the easier it is.
The less it's regulated.
Yeah. The less people there are to monitor them.
Yeah, because it's just too hard to get out there to replace them or to check them even.
And also remember, it's a remote community. It's very hot
out there.
There's a lot of UV.
Does it degrade quicker?
Yeah. So it's the Power and Water Corporation's responsibility to maintain the connection to the house. So that's overhead power lines to that riser pole.
Yep.
It's then the owner, which I didn't know about this, it's the owner's responsibility to have the riser pole installed along with the wiring from that point, so the service lines. The riser pole is also required to be earthed.
Seems fair.
As is the metal roof, which is also the owner's responsibility. So in this case, neither the pole nor the roof were earthed.
Yeah.
Right.
So the roof sat on wooden rafters, which therefore insulated it from the rest of the house. That is why nothing else was conducting the electricity, was because it was sitting on top of wood.
Yeah. But if it had been a steel-framed house,
the whole house.
It would have electrified the whole house.
Yep. Yeah, electrified.
But it didn't.
Sorry.
I don't really know that much about earthing, but what I understand is that it just means those particular components have some sort of attachment or connection to the earth, which means if there is any electrical leakage, the leakage goes into the earth rather than into the person or the thing that is touching it.
Green and yellow.
Yes.
That's all I know.
And then generally everything will be earthed, right? And then usually you have like a power circuit or whatever. And then if there is an earth fault and there is a leakage into the earth, it will generally short the circuit and then it will turn all your electricity off, right?
Yeah,
that's generally like the protection mechanism in properties. But obviously you have to have something earthed for it to trip.
And when was earthing mandated, and when did these protections also become mandated? Because I think the protections are mandated, but again, I'm not sure that, like from previous experience from other electrical cases, was that not the reason it didn't have the protective mechanism in the holy
dishwasher?
Cow? Yes, I think so.
And so like clearly they were developed and regulated at some point.
Yeah, because I think that one wasn't technically non-compliant.
No, it wasn't, because it was installed prior to that particular regulation.
There will have been a point in time that they have become mandatory.
Yeah. So we do know that there are a number of electrical issues with this particular house, and there was an earth fault, I think, with the like hot water system or something like that was found on inspection. So there obviously was the mechanism for some sort of earth fault to be flagged.
Right.
For certain components of the house, but if a component is not earthed, then you can't get an earth fault.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to fault because there's no connection. So if the riser pole or roof had been earthed, a short should have been created and the pole fuse would have blown once that insulation had degraded to the point where the braided cable and pole had become electrified. So basically, in a normal house that has all the correct earthings and things like that, once that degradation happens to those service lines to the point that it was at this point, then it would have tripped.
Yeah. So you would have known about it when it happened rather than it continuing to be electrified.
Yeah, that's right. So, however, without being earthed, the pole and roof remained live at all times with 240 volts running through it. And it's not known how long
that had occurred.
That it was electrified. And we don't know if it's at the point where the degradation occurred that caused it, or whether it had just been electrified the whole time because it wasn't earthed.
And I wonder, like, had this not happened, how long it would have taken?
It would have eventually happened.
Yeah.
Someone would have eventually got there to clean the gutters. You go up there to do some other...
I don't know if the NT, you don't usually have gutters on your properties, but...
Oh, really?
No, because it rains so heavy that...
There's no point. Yeah, okay, fair. But yeah, someone may have needed to go up there at some point to fix the roof or do something. Yeah. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, as I said, the Failure to earth, those two components were the only electrical issues with the house. The veranda, post, beam and mesh were also not earthed, but again, because there was that
insulation,
it didn't, it stopped
They
it
weren't
from creating a
electrified.
circuit. And as I said, there was also an earth fault on the solar hot water booster as well. So after the electrical evaluation, Rory's body was examined again for evidence of contact with an electrical current. And the forensic pathologist found an ill-defined area of very faint brown skin discoloration measuring 8 by 4 centimetres on his left thigh. The dorsal aspects of the 4th and 5th toes on the left foot show superficial pale blister formation, suggestive of electrical activity. So that obviously creates the circuit he's got to.
So we're
2
thinking that
points of contact.
as he was going in, as he's sort of like moving his legs trying to get through that space, his leg has then touched the roof.
Weren't his legs on the
outside, but his hands are on the inside, so maybe he's trying to flick his legs up.
Yeah.
And then his
And
legs
he's gone
hit the
over
roof.
to the roof.
Yeah.
And that would make sense with his toes and his thigh.
because his toes,
Yeah.
It's essentially done like a sort of a scorpion thing with his legs.
Yeah.
And that's contacted the roof and then...
He might have been using the roof as a leverage point.
Trying to push himself
Yeah.
through, and he's pulling
Yep.
at the same time, which would make sense.
Yeah.
So the forensic pathologist was of the opinion that Rory didn't die from the electrocution, but that he was immobilised by the shock in that jackknife position, and due to being in that position for, the forensic pathologist said, like anywhere from like 30 seconds or more. That's enough to cause the positional asphyxia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a shorter period of time.
He's only little.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So on the 9th of November 2020, a senior electrical inspector from NT WorkSafe attended the premises and confirmed the findings in relation to the electrical faults and earthing. So all of that was confirmed. So there are a number of issues that were considered by the coroner in this one. The first one was the records kept by the Power and Water Corporation and other relevant stakeholders.
I'm guessing there weren't many.
If any.
So Power and Water is responsible for the electricity lines to the premises, as I mentioned earlier. However, the corporation did not have any records of the connection of the power lines to House 548.
So according to them, the house didn't have electricity.
No. I'm sure they were being charged
True.
for electricity.
They just had no records of...
So there was no record that it was connected, but we did
We should
charge
still bill
you
them.
for... Yeah, we did bill
Of course.
you. Oh my God. That's even worse.
It didn't have any relevant certificate of compliance, nor could they say when the electricity was connected or who connected it.
Excellent.
Cool.
They were unable to say whether anyone from their organisation or otherwise had ever inspected the cables or the connection to the premises. And just for context, it was estimated, although they couldn't actually find records from when this house was built, but it was estimated that House 548 was built in 1996. So almost 25 years before Rory's death. And so they think there was absolutely no maintenance.
For that 25
there was
years.
maintenance in the last couple of years, but like in terms of the actual
Service
power
line.
lines, no maintenance on it for 25 years.
Not shocked, just disappointed.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if this happened in an urban house?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the uproar if an 11-year-old boy was
Died.
electrocuted because the Power and Water Corporation hadn't adequately connected the home? They had no records about it, and the bloody roof was electrified.
Yeah. It'd be all over the news.
But it's just one of those things of like, what do you mean you don't have records?
Yeah.
Like, just... The 1990s wasn't long enough ago for me to be like... records would have existed or would have been
100%.
required by that point.
100%. So Rory's uncle's employer was the corporation responsible for the maintenance of the connection to the premises, including the electrical installation to the premises. They also had no records about when the premises was built, who built it, who undertook the electrical installation, and what, if any, maintenance was undertaken to the premises prior to 2018.
They were the only owner? Is that like, as in they built the property, or did they purchase the property?
I'm not sure about the details.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, if you're anyone other than the first owner, you may not necessarily have those records, because it's not like you get that when you buy the property.
And it's not something I ever think about. I have to make sure that the
No.
service lines to my house are maintained.
Yeah.
No.
I've never actually thought about that before.
Neither.
So, you know. The builder who was thought to have built the premises also had no records. Otherwise, there were no relevant records held by any of the relevant councils or federal departments. So this house is basically not even on the map.
Well, yeah, like as in there's no council record, so it was not built legally.
It was built legally, like there's no concern.
No, but as in if there's no council record, don't you have to have permission from a council to put
I
a
don't know
property?
if that's the case in remote communities.
Yeah,
I don't know what the
what-
rules are and regulations are.
Okay, fair.
So the coroner noted that it was apparent that the power and water connection to house 548 was poorly installed.
Yep.
What was also concerning was that following Rory's death, Power and Water inspected other connections in Gunbalanya and found other poorly installed connections.
Oh my god.
I'm not surprised though. Like
I'm not. Yeah, I'm
happens
not.
once, it's
Well,
gonna
hang on. Did they
happen
have records for
again.
any of those
No.
houses? Yeah.
Of course not. At least they checked them.
They checked
True.
them. Well, you'd hope so.
How did they check them? Just go around and touch them all? Or?
Also, roof and riser pole earthing issues were also found in other houses owned by Rory's uncle's employer in Gunbalanya.
Again, not surprising.
Or not surprising. So the coroner then looked into the different systems in place for ensuring safe and adequate management of electrical connections.
There were
none.
Pretty much. We start with the Power and Water Corporation had no systems to check that connection of power lines was completed to Australian standards or for the inspection and maintenance of the cables and connections to properties in remote communities.
So, but they didn't know that they existed either. So, I mean, how were you expecting them to maintain them?
They did know they existed because they were billing them.
True. Again, with the someone was being charged.
Yes.
Fair.
They did know they existed because they were receiving money for them.
This is our making an assumption that they were receiving money for them, right?
Yeah, sorry, it is us making an assumption. However, it was conceded by Power and Water that there should have been these systems in place. So it was never in
absolutely.
any contention that this house shouldn't have existed or was built incorrectly or anything like that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So in the coroner's view, it was likely that an inspection and maintenance regime would have prevented Rory's death.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So there was an inspection of the power poles outside of the premises, and there were records of these inspections in 2018 and 2019. However, it was said during evidence of this inquest that absent of any foliage on the service conductors or some other obvious damage, it was unlikely the inspectors would have checked the service conductors. So they looked at it, and because there was no obvious degradation.
Yep. They're just doing a visual check from the ground.
Yeah, correct.
Like, yep, it's still standing. Tick.
Pole is still here.
Pole is there. Things don't look frayed.
Yep.
Yeah.
They look connected to the things they're meant to be connected to.
And that was conducted by the power company or by someone else?
Didn't say.
Oh, okay. So, yes, okay, they knew that the service line existed because someone had checked.
Someone had checked it.
A pole near the service line in 2018. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So on the 2nd of December 2020, so this is like a month and a bit after Rory's death, NT WorkSafe issued improvement notices to the Power and Water Corporation.
Improvement notices.
Not any sort of
Interesting.
infringement notice or like fine.
Or like, this should not have happened.
No.
Maybe you should actually be aware of the services you have running.
Well, that's kind of what the improvement notice is for.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, fine. Yep.
Improve yourselves. So under those improvement notices, Power and Water was required to conduct a systematic inspection of electrical supply services in Gunbalanya, ensuring any safety issues were rectified.
Please.
Absolutely. That seems like the least you could do.
Obviously.
And develop an action plan to inspect overhead electrical supply services commissioned between 1995 and 1998 for regulated centres. So this was required as Power and Water believed that the degraded insulation was from a batch of insulated conductor wires that were used during that period. So basically, they say that during 1995 to 1998, there was potential issue with the cables.
They used a bad batch.
They used a bad batch of cables.
So they have a relative idea of when they were installed then?
Yes, which is why I think I said earlier, they think that this house was built in 1996.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
that all makes sense. So on the 10th of December, so to be fair, only about a week after this improvement notice was issued, Power and Water confirmed that it had complied with the direction.
That's pretty good.
So a program had been developed to inspect the 5,007 overhead services in all 72 remote communities.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, that's a big area to cover.
It is, along with an additional 382 services installed in the regulated urban areas between that 1995 and 1998 period. So they basically went back and anything that was installed between that period
That they had records
inspected,
for.
Plus, we'd assume for some of the urban stuff they would hopefully have
Yeah.
records for.
You say that, but why would you keep urban records but not remote community records?
I feel like there's a double standard going on here. Why would you inspect regularly urban properties but not properties?
Rural. Yeah, anyway. We're just going to, that's fine.
And why would this, again, not have been front page news? I don't know. It really rubs me the wrong way.
I mean, I don't know if you can tell from our tone. It rubs us as well. Yeah, that's very disappointing, though, that they can then turn around and be like, oh, and we also did those urban properties we got records for. And you're like, what do you mean you got records for?
Yeah, why don't you have records for all of the properties where you've installed connections?
Yeah.
And also, how has no one, and the fact that it's just not one property, it is multiple properties in the same community, and no one has
Noticed
picked this up. And
Yep.
it is so dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was obviously bound to happen.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Rory, it was
Someone
going to
was
be
gonna-
someone else.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it was an 11-year-old child.
Yeah.
A second work-safe improvement notice was also issued to Power and Water on the 2nd of December, so the same date, which required them to review maintenance strategies applicable to overhead electrical supply services, rectify all safety issues identified as a result of the targeted action plan to inspect all overhead electrical supply services, and conduct a review of Power and Water Corporation standards in relation to overhead electrical supply service connections to properties and identify potential opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, so with that, they said they fitted out the dodgy batch or whatever.
Mhm.
Had they already gone through and like replaced the other areas that they thought the dodgy batch had been fitted?
More,
say that?
obviously not prior to this. Following the improvement notice, yes.
No, but like when they're identifying it was built around 1996 or 95 to 98 or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
how did they know that that was a dodgy batch?
It doesn't say
Yeah.
how they came to that conclusion.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, there's potential that they've noticed a pattern, maybe for houses that they kept records for.
And yet it took them to 2020 to like be like, oh yeah, for any batch that we put out at that point in time, we'll go make sure that they're
Mm-hmm.
upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
Okay, no worries. Please go on.
So on the 15th of April 2021, Power and Water advised that it had fulfilled the directions contained in that second improvement notice. So they had inspected every service wire in the 72 remote communities and most of the 79 outstations that they could actually get access to. It also inspected 422 services in the regulated network installed between 1994 and 1998. 57% of them were found to have degraded insulation.
No.
Wow.
No. How many of them were causing active live issues?
Doesn't say.
Yeah, okay.
It reviewed and benchmarks its maintenance practices, which is great because there weren't any,
Great.
at least for these remote communities.
That's an easy review.
I know. So, sorry, I shouldn't be so harsh. It was found that although it had good frequency of maintenance, apparently, in recent years, its inspection practices did not include detailed inspection of the service wire and clamps to the point of connection to the customer's residence. So basically, they looked at it.
And from going back, you said the service wire is technically the owner's responsibility?
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah,
is that,
but they're the only people that can replace it? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think you can't just get like a private company to come and replace your wires.
So they're doing frequent checks of what is their responsibility. They weren't doing the frequent checks of what is an owner's responsibility.
But I assume that they still check what is the owner's responsibility because, yeah, as I said, I don't think like
No, anyone else can change it, right?
correct.
But my issue then is like, well, even though it's the owner's responsibility, like payment-wise, is it then the owner's responsibility to pay for the replacement, or is it always going to come at a cost to the power company anyway?
Yeah.
And how that works?
I don't know. I didn't know any of this stuff
Yeah.
It's also NT. I don't know if it's different here.
It could also be different, which leads me to, in terms of inspecting the degradation of lines, it was determined that the NT would then adopt Queensland practices, which apparently in Queensland they use cameras on the top of insulated poles to inspect the top side of conductors and connectors to see if...
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
So Power Water also implemented some other maintenance practices regarding attachment points and conductors, which is all quite technical, and I'm not going to go through that because...
Electricity.
Yeah. Just don't touch it. So this exercise is not the first time that the Power and Water Corporation had identified degraded insulation or contact between the conductors and metal parts of the structure, or the failure to earth particular structures.
Sorry, what?
In 2018, a dog was killed in Alice Springs and its owner received an electric shock trying to save the dog after it walked onto a concrete pad of a power pole where the pole and the earth were energized.
Oh, well, it's a dog, so no one cares, right?
And the person didn't die, they were only shocked. What? And onto a concrete pad?
Yeah,
So it's just like the base of the pole.
Yeah, but I'm just like...
the riser pole.
That's something you, again, wouldn't expect to be electrified.
No.
Absolutely not. Interestingly, as well, during the course of the investigation, the coroner received a whistleblower report from someone employed by the Power and Water Corporation. The person expressed concerns about the lack of preventative maintenance despite known hazards.
Okay.
The person went on to describe and attach documents in relation to another 4 incidents.
Oh my God.
A number of them raising the issue as to lack of inspection and maintenance.
Okay, now I'd like you to stop.
We're almost there.
No, that's all right.
So the coroner made a number of additional comments in relation to this inquest. So in 1996, it is likely that 10 houses were built in Gunbalanya. It appeared that building approval was not required.
Yeah, okay.
So, as we mentioned earlier, and certificates of occupancy were not issued. There was no government agency that the investigating officer was able to find that held any documentation regarding the construction of these residences.
So then the organisation that the uncle worked for owned the building. How does that work?
I don't know. I don't know how, like, the actual title
works.
But obviously, whatever the practice is that's currently being undertaken, or at least was undertaken back when these properties were built, is not sufficient.
Yeah.
That's clear. So Power and Water said that the practice was that the electricity would not be connected to the premises without a certificate of compliance from a licensed electrician who undertook the electrical installation on the house. So
where are those?
Was that done?
Where are they?
But for unexplained reasons, they were unable to produce such a certificate for House 548.
Or I imagine many
or
other.
the other 10
houses
that were built in Gunbalanya around the same time.
Excellent.
They're also unable to produce any document or other evidence in relation to the connection or maintenance of the service conductors or clamps from 1996 onwards.
Again, that's not surprising considering the rest of it.
It's not surprising, but it is really shocking.
Yeah.
Like, why has none of that been done? And it goes back to maybe they just...
It didn't. It did not happen.
Correct.
And so it's like, who installed it? Who did this?
What electrician installed it and didn't issue any sort of certificate?
It probably wasn't an electrician. But how would they have gotten the supply of the service line? Like,
it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
It has to have come from the power company, initially.
Putting it in. Yeah.
Yeah, it really doesn't add up.
And it's not to say that it's, like, nefarious or anything like that. It's just, like...
negligence?
Yeah.
It may not have been malicious, but it is negligence.
Yeah. Is it because they felt that the rural communities there were less value in implementing? And
that's
therefore...
what my mind keeps coming back to. And then also the fact that it was allowed to go on for 25 years before anyone even noticed.
Yep. And they only noticed because someone died.
It's horrendous. Yeah, you're right. Like, if it had happened in one of the urban populations or anywhere else, it would not be okay. Oh, and it's not okay
It's not
now.
okay now.
Yeah.
And how do you change these things? But until things like this happen, we don't know that they exist either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a good solution either, but it
No,
does just
and
make
I've
me really
debated
grumpy.
this very similar topic with so many people, and we always land in this spot of silence, being like, there is a problem,
I don't know how to fix
but
it.
I don't know how to fix it.
I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Mm-hmm. Because there's also that perception of you don't want to be trying to fix something on another culture's behalf when it is not your culture.
And when for them it may not, elements may not be considered as problems that we are perceiving as problems.
Yes.
And you also don't know if there's a problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
until you start investigating this, you don't know that they don't have records.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do you then try and go through every single
But I'd also
thing
be
that
interested to
may-
hear, and obviously in this inquest, I'm assuming because you've not mentioned it, that like no one was seeking review by the power company or anything like that either, you know?
No. It's not like they were asking for
Mm.
maintenance to actually occur, like proactively.
Yeah, and not necessarily specific to power, but like any service they were provided.
Mm.
But it doesn't mention
No.
that.
Or was anyone trying and no one was listening?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to like.
Yeah.
So you can only assume that the answer is no because it wasn't
Yes.
mentioned, but yeah.
Yes. So Rory's family also made written submissions during the coroner's inquest. In those submissions, the family noted that there were numerous issues with the house, from poor workmanship, lack of earthing, damaged insulation, frayed power lines, lack of documentation, and lack of maintenance. So all of these issues were avoidable and contributed to the death of an innocent boy. The family asked that the coroner make significant recommendations on what the Power and Water Corporation should do in auditing, publishing the results of their audits, the class of persons who should carry out inspections, timing of inspections, publication of the cost of improvements, and the adoption of a protocol for remote communities specifically. They also asked that any publications, so interesting that they asked that, audits on communities be conducted and then made public so that everyone can know what the outcome of the audits were, i.e. if there looks like there's a number of frayed power lines, and people are actually then publicly made aware of that.
Yeah.
And they asked that any publication made should be broadcast and distributed in a culturally sensitive way, including through interpretation and translations, interactions with elders, and through community meetings. So they obviously wanted to make this like a community issue.
Yeah.
Because obviously people weren't aware of these defects.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they should have been aware, although just, you don't know.
Look, I mean, Rory was 11 and he had a phone, so presumably he has access to, like, media reports and stuff like that. But making sure it's communicated to, like, community elders and in appropriate language, I think it sounds like a very important part of it. Because I would still assume that they are more isolated and therefore don't see as much of that media that we would see, that therefore they may miss it if it's not like directly communicated to the community.
Especially if it's not in your own language and
obviously
things
that
like that.
too.
That makes it very difficult. Obviously they do have some sort of like internet service or connection out there as well, like mobile phone coverage and things like that. So there is technically access to it, but a lot of older people
don't know how to use it anyway. Yeah.
So the coroner did say that he didn't think it was appropriate to make very specific recommendations about how the Power and Water Corporation conduct its business, because after all, it is a governmental organisation. So it didn't want to make like very, very specific recommendations of like how to publish certain audits and things like that, which is interesting because I feel like in other...
Yeah, I don't see the argument as to why you can't make that recommendation.
Maybe because they didn't want that recommendation to just be taken as like, well, the coroner said we do this, so we only do this?
Potentially.
Yeah, fair.
So the coroner made 2 recommendations. They're very short and sharp. So that the Power and Water Corporation ensure that all infrastructure, including service conductors and clamps, is subject to a system of regular inspections and maintenance, and that the inspection and maintenance be recorded and audited.
Recorded is an important point.
Yep. Audited even better.
Just done in the first place.
Yep. Conducted.
And the second recommendation was that the Power and Water Corporation ensures that all appropriate records are maintained in relation to its functions.
Yes.
It is upsetting that that is a recommendation. Please, organisation, conduct your business As any other would.
Yep.
And please
As any other government agency would.
make records of your decisions and your findings. Yes. So that's the inquest into the death of young Rory.
I'm glad they ended up doing that wider audit/check of all of those
Absolutely. Yeah.
communities. Like, hopefully that has prevented any future deaths, at least in the short term, but I hope that they have changed more systemically and that there's no chance of something like this happening again.
And that there's like a shift in the
Absolutely.
culture of the organisation, because clearly the
Yes.
culture of the organisation wasn't overly proactive.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this has nudged them in that, like, we need to be better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, it's one of those coronial inquests where it does feel like the death is quite, like,
It's just kind of incomprehensible.
it is.
The fact that it could happen in the first place is a bit, like, mind-blowing.
But then the fact that it's not, like, obviously the death is sort of an isolated incident in that someone's died. Obviously there were other instances where people were electrocuted. But the fact that it was so widespread as well in its nature, and the fact that the failings were so serious in the potential consequences.
Yep.
Yeah, like the
Yeah,
pure
this
luck
isn't-
that they weren't more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't like a little trickle of electricity. This was like the full 240 volts.
This is touching the lines when they get knocked down by a
Yeah.
thunderstorm. Yeah.
Correct. Running through the roof of your house.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you imagine you like might have just gone up into the roof space to like grab something and just like touched your roof?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it educational. I don't know.
Thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking.
Frustrating.
That's a good one.
That one too.
Hope you have a great rest of your day and we will catch you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.